The first thing Camille Johnson noticed was the way the man's elbow blocked the aisle. Not by accident, but with the lazy, claiming posture of someone who knew they didn't have to move. She stood there, boarding pass in hand, the overhead bin light casting a sterile glow on her tired face. She just spent 12 hours in meetings across 3 states, running on hotel coffee and adrenaline. All she wanted was to get to 3A, her first-class seat, settle in, and close her eyes for the 2-hour flight back to Atlanta. Except, there was someone already in it. The man didn't even look up as she stopped beside him. Middle-aged, crisp white button-down, gold cufflinks glinting in the cabin lights. He scrolled lazily through his phone, legs stretched out into the aisle like he owned the plane. "Excuse me," Camille said, keeping her voice even. "I think you're in my seat." She held her boarding pass slightly forward, just enough for him to see. His eyes flicked up, pale blue. Cool. Then immediately back to his phone. "I don't think so." She frowned. Checked the number again. "This is 3A. He smirked, not moving. "I've been upgraded. First class isn't assigned to everyone." The pause before that last word wasn't long, but it was heavy enough to make her skin prickle. Camille felt the heat rise in her chest. She'd been here before, in boardrooms, at hotels, in restaurants where her card was questioned while others sailed through. She knew the tone, the implication, "You don't belong here." A flight attendant approached, all polite smiles and quick glances between them. "Is there a problem?" "Yes," Camille said, forcing calm into her voice. "He's in my seat." The attendant turned to the man. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" "I already told you," the man said smoothly, ignoring her. "There must be some mistake. Maybe she's confused. Coach is back there." He nodded toward the curtain behind them. Camille's jaw tightened. She opened her mouth. "Ma'am," the attendant interrupted gently. "If you could just step aside for a moment, we'll sort this out." Step aside, like she was in the way of something more important than the truth. The man leaned back, smirking as she moved into the aisle. "I'll get comfortable for now," he said under his breath. That was the moment Camille decided. Not here. Not today. She could play quiet and dignified, or she could make sure the truth came out before the wheels left the ground. "Go ahead," she said softly, locking eyes with him. "Get comfortable, because in about 5 minutes, this flight wasn't going anywhere." 3 hours earlier, Camille had been standing in the glass-walled lobby of Blackstone Tech's Chicago headquarters, shaking hands with the last of her executive team before heading to O'Hare. She was tired but satisfied. The merger she'd been fighting for was finally signed. It would secure hundreds of jobs and cement her company's position as one of the fastest growing in the industry. But the fatigue in her eyes wasn't just from work. It was from years of knowing she had to be 3 times as prepared, 5 times as composed, and 10 times as careful just to get through the same doors others walked through without thinking. She'd booked this early evening flight weeks ago, knowing she needed the quiet of first class to catch up on documents before landing in Atlanta. Her assistant, Marcus, had even double-checked the seat assignment. 3A, window, left side of the plane. Which was why, standing in the aisle now, being told to step aside felt like something far heavier than a seating mix-up. It was the kind of moment where time slows, and you hear every whisper, see every side eye from passengers wondering if you're the problem. She wasn't. She knew it. And so did the man in her seat. The flight attendant came back a minute later, tablet in hand. "It seems there's been an upgrade mix-up. Sir, your seat is actually 14C. I'm already settled," the man said, still not moving. "Why don't you just put her somewhere else? I'm sure she'll be fine back there." Camille's voice was calm, but the steel underneath could cut glass. "I paid for this seat. I'm not moving." The attendant hesitated. Around them, the air seemed to tighten. Then the man leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough that only Camille and the attendant could hear. "Look, sweetheart, you can sit here if you want to make a scene, but you won't like how it ends." Camille's lips curved into the smallest, most dangerous smile. "Neither will you." The attendant's eyes darted between them. Passengers were shifting in their seats, sensing the tension. The captain's voice crackled over the PA, announcing final boarding. That's when Camille reached into her leather tote, pulled out her phone, and made a call. A short one. The kind of call that made the attendant's polite smile vanish, and the man's confidence flicker. By the time she hung up, the pilot had been notified, and moments later, the intercom announced what no one wanted to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay before departure. Please remain seated. The engines went quiet. The cabin fell into a tense silence, and Camille sat down in 3A without saying another word. Whatever was about to happen next would change the entire flight. Camille watched the plainclothes men move with the quiet certainty of people who didn't need to prove they were in charge. They spoke to the captain first, then to Daniel Klein, then took 2 slow steps into the aisle that made the whole cabin straighten without being told. The taller one had a notebook he didn't look at and a pen he didn't click. The shorter one scanned the rows, face unreadable, eyes landing on 3B like a weight. "Evening, folks," the tall one said, voice calm enough to lower blood pressure. "We're going to ask for your patience a bit longer while we resolve a manifest discrepancy. Nobody is in trouble unless they decide to be." He let the last sentence settle, a soft warning lined with velvet. 3B tried to arrange his face back into arrogance and came out with something closer to panic wearing a suit. "You can't just. This is a seating issue. I was upgraded." She made a scene. The shorter agent kept his tone neutral. "We'll get to all that. First, we need to confirm identities in rows 1 through 3. Captain, if we can borrow the galley?" The captain nodded and stepped aside. One by one, the agents took IDs, scanned barcodes, matched names. The process was boring on purpose, like a lullaby for grown-ups. The Latina woman in 2C handed over her license with a raised eyebrow and got it back with a thanks. The guy in 1D tried small talk and got silence. When it was Camille's turn, the tall agent looked at her license and then at her, not with suspicion, but with recognition he didn't name. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly, handing it back. "Thank you for your cooperation." She felt the smallest catch in her chest at the way he said her name. Not ma'am, not miss. Not, as happened in too many hotels, Mrs. Whoever's not you. Her name, like a fact that didn't need approval. Then it was 3B's turn. The shorter agent held out his hand. "Boarding pass and an ID, please." 3B bristled. "Why do you need my ID? I already boarded." "Because we're doing this for everyone," the agent said, not changing tempo. "Boarding pass and ID." He fished out his phone, flashed the boarding pass screen, and then hesitated at his wallet. For half a second too long. The leather didn't want to open. He finally produced a driver's license and thrust it forward as if the act itself proved innocence. The agent didn't flinch. He took it, scanned, looked at the tablet the gate agent held out. Something ticked behind his eyes. Not surprise, confirmation. "Sir," he said, still soft. "What brings you to Atlanta tonight?" "Business," 3B said. "What kind of business?" "The normal kind," he snapped. "Meetings. You don't need my itinerary." "Company name?" He rolled his eyes. "Do you have a warrant to ask these questions?" "We have an operational hold and a manifest issue," the agent said, tone as even as a metronome. "Company name, please." "Grayson and Winthrop." The tall agent made a small mark in his notebook, like a check next to a line that had been waiting to be checked. "Spell Winthrop for me," he said. 3B's mouth opened, then closed. His tongue pressed against his teeth. "Winthrop." The agent's pen didn't move. "Thanks." He handed the ID back but didn't let go when 3B tugged. "And your middle name?" 3B pulled, annoyed. "What does that matter?" "Because the person at this seat assignment with your first and last name has a different middle initial on the upgrade file," the agent said gently. "And a different date of birth." A ripple ran through the cabin. The tiny shiver of strangers trying not to lean, and 3B blinked, rearranged his features. There must be a data error. This airline screws up all the time. Daniel Klein didn't flinch at the insult, which told Camille everything she needed to know about the power balance in this moment. Klein knew the airline wasn't the center of gravity right now. The agents were, and whatever flag had been thrown wasn't about customer service. The gate agent's tablet chirped. She glanced down and murmured to Klein. The upgrade was attached to a corporate profile. Comp account. The initials don't match his. Whose profile? Klein asked quietly. The agent flicked her eyes at Camille, then quickly away. 3B saw the glance and pounced. Oh, come on. Now we're pretending she owns the plane? This is absurd. Camille didn't move. She felt the air in her lungs settle into a steady rhythm she recognized from high-stakes negotiations. Inhale for what you can control. Exhale what you can't. She'd lived a lifetime inside rooms like this. Rooms where she had to be unshakable while someone tried to make her small. She could do it on a plane too. Her phone buzzed in her toe. She didn't look, but the pattern told her who it was. Two short, one long. A code worked out with Marcus for only when it matters. She slid her hand along the leather, found the device, and thumbed a quick reply without taking it out. I'm fine. Hold calls. Loop board liaison. An older black couple across the aisle whispered to each other, the woman's hand covering the man's. The kid too rose back, peered again, and his mom gently pulled him down with a smile. Seatbelt, sweetie, she whispered, like everything could be managed with buckles and patience. The tall agent handed 3B's license back fully now. Sir, we're going to ask you to come with us off the aircraft to clear up the discrepancy. No, 3B said, voice rising. I won't be humiliated because she made a fuss. This is reverse discrimination. It was a phrase that always landed like a joke told badly at a funeral. A few passengers flinched. The Latina woman in 2C sat up straighter. The short agent didn't change expression. I'm not asking you to be humiliated. I'm asking you to follow a lawful order from flight crew and law enforcement. The alternative is you don't travel tonight. 3B looked around again, seeking a jury to persuade, and found only fatigue and a dozen tiny red recording lights. The strength drained out of his posture in a visible line. He grabbed his briefcase, muttered something that might have been fine, and stood so fast his knee hit the tray table, rattling cutlery in a neat row. He stepped into the aisle and then paused, turning to Camille like he needed one last shot. You think you won? He hissed, but all you did was make yourself a spectacle. Nobody wants you in these seats. Camille met his gaze, calm as a winter lake. You wanted me to move. I didn't. That's what you'll remember. He opened his mouth, found nothing that would land, and stalked forward. The officers bracketed him without touching. The door swallowed him whole. The cabin exhaled as one. The attendant near the curtain closed her eyes for a second, shoulders dropping half an inch. Someone in 1D clapped once before his wife touched his wrist, and he thought better of it. Klein took a small step toward Camille, pitched his voice low. We'll relock in 5, he said. We're almost clear. Thank you, she said, because it cost nothing and she chose to spend it. He nodded. We'll also be filing a report. I'd like to make sure it covers what occurred accurately. He hesitated, then added carefully. If you'd rather, we can take your statement by phone later. I'll do it now, Camille said, while it's fresh. Of course. He glanced at the agents. The tall one approached. Ms. Johnson, appreciate your patience. One more thing, and we'll be out of your hair. He kept his voice gentle but professional. We need to ask about the call that triggered the hold. Who did you contact? My assistant calls your corporate desk, she said. I placed one call to a colleague who sits on your board's community advisory. That's all. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. And earlier today, did you interact with a Mr. Patrick V. Gray at O'Hare's security? Camille blinked. Who? Never mind, he said lightly, making a note. Different thread. Different thread. The words eased and tightened her in the same breath. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about a name that didn't match an initial, an upgrade that belonged to a corporate profile that wasn't 3B's, and something else that flooded just out of view like a curtain in a draft. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus, likely, or her board liaison, or the general counsel who hated surprises but loved the way she handled them. She let it buzz. The world had shrunk to the thin rectangle of carpet under her feet, the gleam of the wing outside, the scent of citrus cologne fading like a bad idea. The captain stepped to the PA and did the soothing voice thing. Folks, We're nearly ready to resume. Thank you for your patience. People relaxed incrementally. A baby somewhere sighed into sleep. Someone cracked a joke too low to carry. The tension loosened like a knot that had been taught to untie itself. Then the short agent leaned in again, voice so soft only she could hear. Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry to ask, but could you step off with us for just a moment? We'd like to get your statement privately. He added, almost apologetic. And there's a second matter we need to clarify with you directly. For the first time all night, a thin thread of cold slid down her spine. Not fear. Calculation. She kept her tone even. Am I a suspect in something, Agent? Carter, he said. And no, ma'am. You're not a suspect. You're a necessary witness. And, he hesitated, choosing each word like it might explode. There's an alert tied to your corporate travel profile we need to confirm. It's probably nothing, but we can't push without clearing it. Across the aisle, 2C's eyes widened a fraction, catching Camille's line of sight. You okay? The woman's face asked without words. Camille gave her a small nod, unbuckled, and stood. Klein stepped back to clear space. The attendant moved the curtain aside. The cool air from the jet bridge licked at her ankles. She reached down for her tote and felt something she didn't expect, the faintest tremor in her fingers. She curled them into a fist once, opened them, and the tremor was gone. She followed the agents to the door, the cabin's hum dimming behind her. The kid too rose back, whispered, Mom, where's the lady going? Just to talk, the mom murmured. She'll be right back. Camille stepped onto the jet bridge. The door swung almost closed behind them, leaving a slice of cabin light like a promise. Agent Carter turned to her, expression neutral. The tall one checked the corridor, then looked back. Ms. Johnson, Carter said softly. Thank you. 2 quick things. First, your corporate upgrade account is registered to Blackstone Technologies, yes? Yes, she said. And second, he continued, holding out a small printed slip like a magician revealing a card. Are you aware that the travel alias attached to that account is CJ03, and that an hour ago, someone using CJ03 tried to board a different flight out of this airport with a flagged credential? For a heartbeat, Camille stood between 2 worlds, the bright, recirculated air of the plane and the metallic, cooler breath of the jet bridge. She felt the weight of the question, the shape of the implication, and the way it hooked into the part of her life most people didn't know existed. She met Carter's eyes, steady. I'm aware of the alias, she said, voice smooth as glass. And if someone else used it, you're not just dealing with a seat thief. Carter nodded once, satisfied he'd thrown the right line. Behind them, the cabin pay chimed, and passengers shifted, thinking they were about to move. They weren't, because in the next breath, a second pair of plainclothes stepped onto the bridge from the terminal, held up a phone with a photo on it, and said quietly, We have a match to your 3B. Camille didn't flinch at the flicker of the jet bridge lights, but her senses sharpened the way they always did when she smelled trouble before it had a name. The plainclothes officer with the phone stepped closer to Agent Carter, tilting the screen so only the small circle of them could see. The photo wasn't just 3B's driver's license picture. It was a different kind of photo, grainy, black and white, clearly pulled from a surveillance feed. 3B was mid-stride in an airport terminal somewhere, wearing the same button down, but without the jacket, carrying a duffel bag instead of a briefcase. The timestamp in the corner made Camille's stomach tighten. It was from this morning. Carter took the phone, studied it, and then glanced at the taller agent. Same man. The taller agent's voice was low, even. Location? Dulles. Boarding gate for flight 692 to Brussels, the plainclothes said. Except he never boarded. He slipped out of the secure area before final call. Carter's eyes flicked to Camille. And 3 hours later, he's sitting in your seat. Camille kept her tone steady. Coincidence? The taller agent shook his head. Not likely. The thought slid in quietly. 3B wasn't here by accident. He had picked her seat, in her row, with her corporate upgrade tag. And he hadn't just wanted to make her move. He wanted to make her disappear into some administrative shuffle where no one would ask the wrong questions. Ma'am, Carter said carefully, this may involve your company's travel credentials being compromised. Is there anyone who has access to your profile besides you and your assistant? Two executive coordinators in Atlanta, she said, and our corporate travel rep. That's it. Any chance one of them could be pressured? The taller agent asked. Camille thought of her people. Fiercely loyal, tight-knit, the kind of team who'd walk into fire for each other. Not willingly, not without me knowing something was wrong. Carter exchanged a glance with the taller agent, a silent conversation that lasted one heartbeat too long. Then he said, we need you to stay off the aircraft until we finish processing him. I thought he was gone, she said. He is. Off the plane, Carter said. Not off the grid. From inside the cabin, muffled through the door, came the captain's voice over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. We'll be underway shortly. It was a lie. Camille knew it the way you know a poker player is bluffing. The voice was too warm, too smooth. Buying time. Is my flight going to be canceled? She asked. Possibly, Carter said. But if it is, it won't be because of you. The taller agent added. If anything, you grounded it before he could finish whatever he came here to do. Camille felt a cold thread run down her spine. She didn't like the whatever. Behind her, footsteps approached fast from the terminal side of the jet bridge. Another agent in a navy blazer appeared, holding a slim file folder. He looked directly at Camille before speaking to Carter. Got a hit on the alias. CJ03 was flagged 6 months ago in connection with an attempted breach at a trade summit in Brussels. The profile was sanitized before anyone could follow up. Sanitized how? Carter asked. The blazer didn't look away from Camille. By someone with executive-level clearance at Blackstone Technologies. For a second, all Camille heard was the low hum of the jet bridge's ventilation system. She'd been in enough hostile takeovers, enough congressional hearings, enough closed-door sessions with lawyers to know that sanitized wasn't an IT term here. It was a chess move. Someone had used her company's credentials, maybe even her name, for something that could have blown up far bigger than a stolen seat. And now, 3B was a piece on that board. Agents, she said quietly. You're not asking the right question. Carter tilted his head. Which is? She leaned in, her voice low enough to disappear into the hiss of recycled air. You're asking who used my alias. You should be asking why they wanted me in coach tonight. The taller agent's eyes narrowed, because Camille knew with the same certainty she knew how to close a hostile deal, that 3B's move had never been about comfort. It had been about access. Sitting in her seat put him next to 3B's real target, her carry-on, which had been under the seat in front of him when she was told to step aside. And in that carry-on, tucked inside a slim leather folio, were the only hard copy merger documents for the Blackstone Carter Systems deal. Documents that would mean billions to the right thief, or the right saboteur. She straightened. You need to check his hands for fiber transfer, she said. If he touched my bag, he didn't do it for legroom. The taller agent turned to the plainclothes with the phone. Get forensics on the briefcase. The man was already moving. Carter looked at her with something between professional respect and wary curiosity. You sound like you've done this before. Camille's mouth curved, but it wasn't a smile. I've done a lot of things before. Behind them, the jet bridge door cracked open. Daniel Klein stepped out, his face tense. Ms. Johnson, the captain wants a word. Off the record. Off the record, she repeated. That's how we got here. Klein didn't argue. He just said, if you're willing to stay grounded a little longer, I think you're going to want to hear this. Camille glanced at Carter. He gave her a small nod. She followed Klein back down the bridge toward the terminal, away from the plane, her heels clicking in a rhythm that sounded less like retreat and more like repositioning. She was no longer just a passenger whose seat had been stolen. She was a player in whatever game had just been dragged into the open. And somewhere between the gate and the captain's waiting words, Camille decided she wasn't leaving this airport without knowing who had moved their first piece and how many moves they thought they had left. The gate was quieter now, stripped of the rush and chatter from boarding. Most of the passengers had drifted toward the coffee kiosk or settled back into the gate seats, scrolling on their phones. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the only steady sound, like the room was holding its breath. Captain Lewis was standing near the counter, his cap tucked under one arm, talking low to another man in a Navy pilot's jacket. When he saw Camille, his gaze sharpened, not hostile, not exactly warm, but measuring. "Ms. Johnson," he said, straightening. "Appreciate you taking a moment." Camille set her toe on the counter, her hand resting lightly on the leather as if to remind herself it was still there. "I don't think I had much choice." The other pilot glanced at Lewis, then walked away, leaving them alone. Lewis leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I've flown 30 years. I've never had ops tell me to hold a door for a passenger issue and a security review on the same flight. The two don't mix. Unless someone's trying to keep the right people in place, or the wrong ones out." Camille tilted her head. "And which do you think I am?" "That," he said, "is what I'm trying to figure out." Before she could answer, Daniel Klein reappeared, holding a thin folder with the airline's logo embossed on the cover. "Captain, I'll take it from here." Lewis hesitated, then gave Camille a nod and walked off, his eyes scanning the windows toward the jet bridge like he half expected someone to appear. Klein gestured toward a small, glass-walled conference room tucked behind the gate counter. "We can talk in here." Inside, the hum of the terminal dimmed. Klein closed the door and set the folder on the table. He didn't sit. "This is off the record," he said quietly. "And I'm telling you because whether you want to be or not, you're now part of this." Camille remained standing, her back straight. "Go on." Klein opened the folder, revealing a printed seating manifest with several names highlighted in yellow. Her name, Camille Johnson, was in the middle, with the upgrade tag CJ03 in small print beside it. 2 rows down was a listing for Patrick V. Gray, which had been crossed out with a note: "No show at boarding." "That's the passenger your friend in 3B was booked to sit next to," Klein said. "Gray's ticket was purchased through a shell company this morning at 6:14 a.m. Paid in cash. The ID he used checked out as security, but doesn't match any state database. And he never boarded," Camille said. "Right," Klein said. "But someone with a different name, our 3B, was scanned into the secure area 10 minutes later, carrying a ticket that wasn't his, and sitting in a seat that wasn't his." She leaned forward slightly. "You think Gray and 3B were connected?" "I think 3B wasn't here for a nap and a gin tonic," Klein said. "And I think he needed to be in first class for a reason. Maybe to get close to Gray. Maybe to get close to you." Her eyes flicked to her tote. "He touched my bag." Klein didn't look surprised. "That would make sense. Ops already pulled security footage. On the way to your row." He slows, glances down, adjusts his briefcase under the seat, exactly where your tote was supposed to be. A low, hot anger pulse behind her ribs. "And if I'd moved like your crew suggested, he'd have had time to do whatever he came for without anyone noticing," Klein finished. They stood in silence for a beat, the muffled sounds of the terminal pressing against the glass. Then Camille said, "You keep saying, whatever. You have no idea what it is." Klein's jaw tightened. "We don't. And that's the problem." Before she could push further, the door opened. Agent Carter stepped in, the taller agent behind him. Carter's expression was unreadable. "We've got him in a holding room," Carter said to Klein. Then, to Camille, "You were right. Fiber transfer from your tote matches his sleeve. But that's not all. We found a microdrive in his briefcase. Encrypted. Could have been dropped in your bag without you knowing." "Data theft," Klein muttered. "Classic corporate hit." Carter didn't respond to Klein. His eyes stayed on Camille. "Does Blackston have anything worth stealing from you specifically?" She thought about the merger documents, the proprietary AI designs, the unreleased contract drafts. "From me? Personally?" "Yes." The taller agent crossed his arms. "Then you see the problem. Whoever sent him knew your exact seat, your travel alias, your company's booking patterns. This wasn't random." Camille held his gaze. "Then we're asking the same question I asked before. Why make me move?" Carter's lips thinned. "To get into position without drawing suspicion. First-class passengers don't question each other's presence. as much as they do someone moving forward from coach. And if you resist, she said, you become the story, not him. He nodded. Klein stepped forward, lowering his voice. There's one more wrinkle. The upgrade tag he used? It didn't come from your account. It came from a VIP override code, one that's only issued to board-level executives or government partners. Camille's stomach went cold. Meaning? Meaning, Klein said. Someone with very high-level clearance wanted him exactly where he was. The taller agent's radio crackled softly. He stepped back, listened, then returned. We've got confirmation. There was a second party on this flight connected to 3B. They're still on board. Camille's mind moved fast. Row? The agent hesitated. 14. 14C, she said instantly. The seat they tried to put me in. Carter's eyes sharpened. You sure? I'm positive, she said. That's what he said he didn't do, middle seats. Which means he knew exactly what was in 14C and didn't want to be there. Klein looked between them. So the swap wasn't just to get him near your bag. It was to keep you away from whoever's in 14C. Carter nodded slowly. Which means that person might not even know they're part of this. Or, Camille said, they know exactly what they're doing. The agents exchanged a look. Carter straightened. We'll need you to ID them before we move in. And Ms. Johnson, she met his eyes. If this goes the way I think it will, your role in this won't be a secret for long. Camille didn't look away. Then we'd better make sure I like the ending. The taller agent opened the door. Let's go. As they stepped back into the terminal, the hum of the gate seemed louder now, the people more restless. The jet bridge door was still closed, the plane still locked in its holding pattern. Camille adjusted her tote on her shoulder, every muscle in her body steady and ready, because in the next few minutes, she'd be walking back onto that aircraft, not as a passenger reclaiming her seat, but as the one person who could point to 14C and decide which way this game was going to break. The jet bridge felt different on the way back, quieter, heavier, like the air itself knew something was about to happen. Agent Carter walked just ahead of Camille, his pace unhurried but deliberate. The taller agent a half step behind her. Klein had stayed at the gate, working with operations to keep the boarding door closed until Carter gave the signal. As they reached the aircraft door, the flight attendant standing there gave Camille a look, part apology, part curiosity, before stepping aside. Let's keep it calm, Carter murmured. You'll walk to your seat like nothing's changed. When we hit row 14, we'll stop. Camille nodded once, her tote secure against her side. Her heels made a soft, steady rhythm on the carpeted aisle. The passengers in first class looked up as she passed, their expressions a mix of recognition and mild surprise. Word had spread. She was the woman who grounded their flight. Row 5, row 6. The curtain to coach. Beyond it, the light shifted, brighter, harsher, and the air smelled faintly of brewed coffee and too many carry-on bags. She counted the rows. 10, 11, 12. Her heartbeat matched her steps. 13, 14. 14C sat on the aisle, a man in his early 40s with close-cropped hair and a charcoal hoodie. His skin was pale, his posture loose in a way that looked deliberate, like he wanted to seem forgettable. A pair of noise-canceling headphones rested around his neck, the cord dangling but not plugged into anything. He didn't look up, not right away, but Camille felt it, the subtle change in the air when someone knows they're being watched. His head tilted just enough to catch her in his peripheral vision, and when their eyes met, she saw it. Recognition, not surprise. Carter's voice was easy, conversational. Sir, mind if we see your boarding pass? The man in 14C didn't blink. Problem? Just a quick verification, Carter said, holding out a hand. The man smiled faintly, but it was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. Left it in the seat pocket. Want me to grab it? Yes, Carter said. The man reached slowly into the pocket, pulling out the boarding pass. Camille saw his other hand dip, almost imperceptibly, toward the underseat area. The taller agent's hand landed lightly on the man's shoulder before it could disappear completely. Let's keep both hands where we can see them, the agent said. His tone was pleasant. His grip was not. The man leaned back, his eyes on Camille now. You're the reason we're sitting here. Camille didn't look away. You're welcome. Carter took the boarding pass, glanced at the tablet the attendant handed him, and nodded slightly. Sir, can you stand for us? Why? Because, Carter said, your name isn't on this manifest, and the ticket you're holding belongs to someone who never boarded. The man's gaze flicked between Carter and Camille. For a second, something like calculation passed over his face. Not panic, not fear, but weighing odds. Then he exhaled slowly and stood. The taller agent stepped into the aisle, positioning himself between Camille and 14C. The movement drew the attention of half the cabin. Heads turned. Whispers rose. Is this about that other guy? Someone asked from 15A. Nobody answered. The man in 14C picked up his backpack from under the seat. Camille's eyes followed the movement and froze. She knew that bag. Not the brand, not the model, the type. It was the same tactical style laptop pack her own security consultants used when moving sensitive hardware. Carter saw it too. Put the bag down, he said evenly. The man didn't move. It's just my personal. Now, Carter said. Slowly, the man set it on the seat. The taller agent reached for it. The man's hand twitched. Too fast, too sharp, and suddenly the air in the cabin was razor thin. Carter stepped closer. Don't, he warned. The man's gaze cut back to Camille, and for the briefest moment, she saw something like frustration flash through him, like whatever plan he'd had was now ash in his hands. You don't even know what's in this, he said quietly. Camille's voice was steady. Then let's open it. The taller agent unzipped the pack in one smooth motion. Inside was a slim, matte black hard case, no larger than a showbox. No labels, no airline tags. Carter looked at Camille. You recognize that? She didn't, but she knew enough to hear the weight in his voice. No, but I know it doesn't belong on this flight. The man in 14C smiled again, but this time it had teeth. You should have taken the other seat. Before anyone could react, the taller agent had him turned, wrists secured with a smooth, practiced motion. The case stayed where it was, zipped halfway open like a wound. The aisle was silent except for the low hiss of the cabin's air system. Carter handed the case to the attendant. This is leaving with us. Captain, we need the aircraft secured until we clear it. The captain's voice came over the PA, calm but clipped. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be holding a bit longer due to a security matter. Please remain seated. As Carter guided 14C down the aisle, Camille watched every step. Not because she needed to see him go, but because she needed to memorize the way his eyes slid past her without fear. Whoever had sent him wasn't done. And as she sat back in 3A, tote at her feet, she realized this was no longer about a stolen seat or even a compromised upgrade code. This was about the fact that two people with forged identities had been placed on her flight, in strategic seats, and she had been in the middle of both. By the time Camille was escorted off the plane again, the boarding area had emptied of casual gawkers. The curious had drifted away, leaving behind only the airline staff, 2 TSA supervisors, and the plainclothes agents who now moved like chess pieces locking down a board. The matte black case from 14C sat on the gate counter, ringed by Carter, the taller agent, and a bomb tech in a gray jumpsuit. They weren't opening it here, not yet. But the way they kept their bodies angled toward it told Camille it was something that needed to be handled with both precision and caution. Daniel Klein came toward her, his expression tight. Ms. Johnson, we're moving you to a secure lounge while they finish their Marcus blinked. Good? If they think we're on the defensive, they'll push harder. And the people behind us can't resist pushing harder. We make them feel like they're winning, they'll get sloppy. He gave a slow nod. And Carter? He wants me to keep my travel plans, she said. Exactly as is. We're bait. Marcus didn't like it. She could see it in the set of his jaw. But he trusted her judgment. Then we'll make sure the hook's sharp. Camille tapped the screen. pulling up the VIP override logs Klein's team had sent before she left Chicago. A tidy list of every time in the last 30 days a high-clearance code had been used to upgrade or alter a seat connected to her travel alias. Most of the entries were routine. Internal upgrades she'd authorized for staff. Adjustments for schedule changes. But 3 stood out, all within the past 10 days. All at airports where she'd been. All tied to the same authorization ID, EJ427. She didn't recognize the code, but she recognized the initials. Elias Jennings, Blackstone board member, one of the loudest voices against the Carter Systems merger. Her pulse stayed steady, but her jaw tightened. Marcus, I want a full background pull on Jennings. Travel records, personal holdings, everything. Start with the last year. You think he's behind this? I think, she said, that if you're going to put a target on me, you shouldn't use your own fingerprints on the arrow. Marcus smiled faintly at that. And if he's working with someone outside, then Carter will find them, Camille said. And I'll deal with Jennings. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She let it ring twice before answering. Ms. Johnson. The voice was male, low, unhurried. I hear you had some trouble on your flight tonight. Her grip on the phone didn't change. And you are? Let's just say I'm disappointed. We had high hopes for our meeting. She let the silence stretch until the man chuckled softly. You really should have taken the other seat. The line went dead. Marcus's head snapped up. Who was that? Camille set the phone down, her mind already moving ahead. Confirmation, she said. They wanted me in 14C. The city's skyline glinted in the glass behind her. Whoever had made that call thought they'd unsettled her. They didn't realize they'd just given her exactly what she needed. Proof that the attack was targeted, intentional, and still in motion. She turned back to Marcus. Double the security on all our travel accounts. And tell Carter I have my ID ready for the next flight. Because if they thought she was going to back down, they didn't understand the first thing about Camille Johnson. By the next morning, Camille was done reacting. She was moving. Her office blinds were half open, letting in a slice of Atlanta's golden sunrise. The city below was already awake, a hum of movement and ambition, and she could feel that same pulse in her chest. On her desk sat 2 devices, her personal phone and a secure satellite phone Carter's team had delivered overnight. One was for the world that thought it knew her. The other was for the world that didn't. Marcus walked in with a tablet under his arm. Jennings is in DC this week, he said. Meetings at a private lobbying firm. His schedules. Vague. Camille looked up. And his phone records? Scrubbed. We'll need a warrant, which Carter says he can push for, but he's got to go through channels. Then we don't wait, Camille said. We make Jennings talk before he knows he has to. She dialed her personal phone, put it on speaker, and leaned back in her chair. When Jennings' assistant answered, she didn't bother with pleasantries. Tell Elias it's Camille Johnson. He can either take this call now, or I'll see him on the 7 o'clock business news explaining how his override codes keep ending up in the hands of federal security risks. There was a pause. Then, one moment, Ms. Johnson. 30 seconds later, Jennings' voice came on, tight and practiced. Camille, what on earth? Don't, she cut in. I know about EJ427. I know you've used it 3 times in the last 10 days. All tied to my travel alias. I know 2 of those times coincided with security incidents. He hesitated. I think you've been misinformed. You can save the lawyer speak, she said. You and I both know this wasn't random. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call whoever you've been feeding that code to and tell them I'm off limits. And then you're going to send me a list of every interaction you've had with them in the last 6 months. Jennings laughed. Brittle. Defensive. Camille, I don't respond to threats. You do when they're recorded, she said, tapping the small red light blinking on her desk recorder. And when they come with a copy to the Department of Homeland Security. Silence. Check your inbox in 5 minutes, he said finally, and hung up. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Think he'll send it? He'll send something, she said. Enough for Carter's team to run with. The rest, we'll pry loose. She switched to the sat phone and dialed Carter directly. He answered on the first ring. "Morning, Ms. Johnson." "Morning. I have a name for you. Elias Jennings, board member. 3 code uses tied to my alias." Carter whistled softly. "That's bold. It's sloppy," she corrected. "And if he's working with the people from last night, he's already nervous. You can push him from your side. I'll keep squeezing from mine." "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say," Carter replied. "We're running full intel on both suspects." The case from 14C was clean. Not a device, not explosives, but it was lined with a false panel. Could have hidden a microdrive. "We're checking prints. And when you find something," she asked, "you'll be the first to know." After she hung up, Marcus slid a file across the desk. "Here's the other piece. Financial records on the shell company that bought 14C's ticket. It's connected to a holding firm in Brussels, the same city Carter mentioned from that earlier breach." Camille scanned the pages, her mind assembling the pieces. Brussels, EJ 427, false panels. Someone had been building this pipeline for months, maybe years, and her merger trip had been the perfect moment to run their play. Except it hadn't worked. She smiled, small, sharp. "Let's ruin their timeline." Marcus grinned. "How?" "We feed them bait," she said. "A trip with just enough chatter to make them think it's valuable. Booked under CJ03. You leak it through the same channels Jennings used. Carter will have his people shadow every step." "And you?" Marcus asked. She looked out the window at the city that had been hers to command long before she had the title to match. "I'll be in plain sight. The one thing they don't expect me to be." Her phone buzzed. A new email from Jennings. No subject line, just a file attachment and 3 words in the body. "We need to talk." Camille didn't open it yet. She didn't have to. She'd already won the first move of her counterattack. Somewhere, in a room full of people who thought they could push her out of a seat, a boardroom, or her own company, the realization was setting in. Camille Johnson wasn't just sitting back down. She was clearing the whole row. By the time the sun dipped